All right. So, welcome everyone to the fourth and last session of the Engaging Communities for Risk Governance, Resilience, and Sustainability 2021 webinar series. Our session today is broadcasted live on the Facebook page of the Coastal Cities at Risk in the Philippines, as seen on your screens. All right, so please be guided by the house rules for today's session. So first, all attendees must mute themselves and turn off their video upon entry. The ceremony will be recorded for documentation purposes. And for attendees, please send your questions through the chat box at the bottom of your screen so that our team can note this and raise it during our open forum. So we begin this webinar with opening remarks from our convener, Dr. Emma Porio, who is the project leader and principal investigator of the Coastal Cities at Risk in the Philippines and the co-director of the Master in Disaster Risk and Resilience of Ateneo de Manila University. I now welcome Dr. Emma Porio.
Thank you, Patty. Good morning. For those in Southeast and East Asia, good morning. For those in South Asia, good early morning. I know it's about 6 a.m. there in Sri Lanka. And for those in the United States and Costa Rica, good evening. Thank you very much. So, in behalf of Father Roberto Yap, SJ, President of the Ateneo de Manila University, and project holder of the Coastal Cities at Risk in the Philippines, and our partners, the National Resilience Council, the Department of Sociology and Anthropology, and the Asian Peace Builders Program of the Nippon Foundation, let me welcome you to this session of Engaging Communities for Risk Development, Resilience, and Sustainability. Today's session 4, Local Resource Management, Resilience, and Sustainability, we in the Faculty of Master in Transdisciplinary Social Development and the Asian Peace Builder Scholars are very fortunate to have today Professor Marie Fritz, U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. He is a member of the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, National Environmental Justice Advisory Council. And John Fritz has been my mentor in the International Sociological Association. He was past president of the Clinical Sociology Division of the ISA and currently Presidential Advisory Board of the Clinical Sociology Division of the International Sociological Association. Jessica Soto, we're very grateful to have her. She has been instrumental in doing so many housing innovations in the Philippines. She's the country director of We Effect Philippines. And finally, we have Dr. Billy Tusalem, who has been working a lot in terms of social development, especially in housing. He's a director of the Julio and Ledesma Foundation, and also a board of directors, I mean. And as I was saying earlier, I'm very fortunate to have him because a member of the board of the Holy Ledesma Foundation is really Bishop Ledesma, who was the president of the Philippine Sociological Society at the time. He got his PhD in sociology in Wisconsin, and I think he's one of those leaders in the church who is very sociologically engaged, theoretically and practically. So let us welcome everyone to this morning session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Porio. Now we officially begin our webinar by calling our first guest speaker, Dr. Marie Fritz, who will discuss environmental justice, housing, and dispute intervention. Dr. John Fritz is a member of the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's National Environmental Justice Advisory Council and is also a presidential board member of RC46 Clinical Sociology of ISA, or the International Sociological Association. Let us now welcome Dr. Fritz.
Thank you. Appreciate it. That's very nice of Emma to invite me to take part, and I'm really looking forward to the other presentations. So we'll just begin here. I am talking about environmental justice, housing, and dispute intervention. The other presentations will have a much heavier focus on housing. I'll be talking about environmental justice and intervention. I should mention that I'm primarily an academic. I teach at the University of Cincinnati, and I also teach at the University of Johannesburg. So it gives me a look at what's going on in two very different parts of the world, but the problems are the same. If you go to slide 1, please. These are levels of intervention. Emma mentioned that I'm a clinical sociologist, and like a lot of other professions, some of them, particularly in academics, are strictly about people probably doing research and exchanging it among each other, not necessarily doing anything in practice areas. But there are some of the areas that are in universities where there are very strong practice traditions. Sociology has a practice tradition, and there are two elements to that, usually applied or clinical. Applied is research for practical purposes. That's primarily what somebody might do. And the other is clinical, and that's the intervention. And when we talk about intervention, it would be at all the levels. So if you look at the bottom right, it starts with individual, then going up on the right to small group, then with organizations, then with communities, then national or international or global. And there can be more levels. You can have regional, and so there can be variations in this. But the idea is that somebody who is a sociologist and does practicing work, and in my case, I do organizational development work, and I'm also a mediator. And so there are many sociologists that do that. In many fields, there is intervention, but nobody may discuss these different levels of intervention. And I think that's one of the contributions that comes out of our field, that it's important, even if you specialize in working at community intervention or with small groups like families or individuals, that you need to know something about the other levels of intervention. If you want to move something forward, for instance, in a policy way, to get national policy decision on something, you frequently, or someone in your team, needs to talk with individuals and work with them to convince them that this is something that needs to be done. So you can't just say, I'm going to work on the community or I'm going to work on the international. Usually these other levels are involved, sometimes minimally, sometimes in the process of intervention. One level may become less important than another, but it's very important, I think, to think about this. What is your main goal? Then which of these levels are you going to use to do it? If you pass something on a national or an international level and people individually don't understand it, they may not go along with something that needs to be done. An example might be, we celebrate an Independence Day in the United States on July 4th. And so there are a lot of fireworks celebrations. These are legal and they're usually put on by communities, but a lot of other people buy fireworks. In some places it's legal, in other places it's not. It's usually not legal to have your own fireworks display, but people do it. And if nobody enforces it, you got half the people and pretty much half the pets complaining because pets don't like fireworks going off about it. So the point is that if you want to put something in place, even if you got a community decide or a nation, you might have to work on individually or for organizational efforts to move it forward. And so any kind of intervention, it's something to be thinking about. But this is the kind of model that clinical sociologists use, and they're expected to know something about. Maybe going to the next slide, please. Here's a definition of environmental justice. This is one of the areas which sociologists work in. They may work on environmental issues, but not necessarily environmental justice. I'm just giving you one definition here. This definition happens to be the one that the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency uses. So just looking at it, environmental justice is the fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people, regardless of race, color, national origin, or income, with respect to the development, implementation, and enforcement of environmental laws, regulations, and policies. Now, this makes it sound like it's for everybody, but in fact, how it plays out in the United States, there'd be more emphasis on people who are outside of the power structure, less likely to have money, less likely to be in a position to advocate for themselves. That environmental justice, that should be the emphasis. One of the problems is, let's go back to that beginning, fair treatment and meaningful involvement. Fair treatment. Well, let's say you have a community and the whole place is polluted. It's polluted for poor people as well as people who are well off. Well, it's fair. Everybody's getting the same, right? So that word might not make it for you, or this definition might not. And meaningful involvement, what does that mean? Does that mean going to a meeting where somebody tells you what they're going to do and you nod? Or does it mean we start with you? What would you like in your communities, and we move something forward? So you're going to find different definitions of environmental justice. This is just one of them. And one thing I don't like about this definition is in some countries, when you talk about environmental justice, you're talking about justice for the environment as well. So it's not just if somebody is getting sick because they live there. It's thinking about who might live there, whether it's another animal, not necessarily a person, who's going to be there 20 years from now, and how it's going to affect them. So to me, it also needs to include fairness for the environment. But fair treatment, meaningful involvement to move something forward. Emma mentioned that I'm on this advisory council that's part of the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. All the arms of government have the possibility of having advisory councils. So some of them have a few and others have many. There are a number of them within the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. Of those, we have one that has environmental justice as a focus. What's interesting about this year in the United States is we had 4 years of rather sleepy, that's a very nice way of putting it, protection of the environment. And so things have just changed. The new president has put in place a White House Council for Environmental Justice, which is also connected to EPA. So now we have the council that's part of EPA, and we have the council that's part of the White House. Wow. There's a coordination on this, but the idea is that we want to move things forward, focusing on environmental justice over the next 4 years. You will find some agencies that have these councils, and you may even go to a website like the Department of Energy and see, oh yeah, they have something that talks about environmental justice, but you may see it plays out very differently in the different agencies. And in fact, it's been rather sleepy recently. So let's see where we're going with this. We're hopeful. If we could go to the next slide, please. All right, this is talking about some strategies. It's always interesting to be on something connected to heads of organizations or governments, because they're frequently developing reports or action plans about how they're going to do something. And the more you're involved with it, you see they're often very general in their wording, and you may feel that something's lacking about it. The United States has areas that are heavily polluted. Many of these have gone through a process to be identified, and they are referred to as Superfund sites. We have had legislation since 1980 that puts this process in place. So a community or organization can decide they want to go through the application process. They turn in information, and they may be accepted as a Superfund site. So these are most polluted. We have more than 1,300 of these sites. We have 400 that have come off the list as being on it, but we have 1,300 active most polluted sites. If you look at a map, it looks like they're heavily concentrated in the Northeast, but most of these sites are in New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and in California. Not so many in the South, which is kind of interesting. If you know something about the US, often companies move to the South to avoid unionization. And so I'm not sure that this reflects actually the number of sites. It may be that certain areas have not gone through the process, or communities feel they've been blocked and can't get through the process to get something identified as a site. These are, a recent report was talking about strategies that needed to be dealt with to move things forward for Superfund sites. And I've got 2 pages. Let's just looking at the first page here. Implement more intensive community engagement practices. Revise and update guidance and strengthen policies focused on understanding and responding to community needs. Update and improve and expand training. Elevate future use planning, as what are you going to do with this after this particular property has been dealt with? Could we move to the next slide, please? Leverage redevelopment and reuse as a catalyst for innovation, ensure equity in all aspects of the program, increase access to resources for communities. And when you're looking at something like this, you're thinking about what's missing. I'm hoping you're thinking about what's missing. I have not been on that many Superfund sites. The one that's outside of Cincinnati, Ohio, where I teach, has animals running around, walking trails, and a small museum. And you think, this looks pretty nice, you know? But recently, maybe in the last year and a half, EPA got our small group that was working on a report for Superfund to visit a site that's existing in Pennsylvania. And remember, I said Pennsylvania is one with a number of sites. This one is very close to the Philadelphia airport. I was really shocked. They've got a sign up saying, you know, Superfund site. You've got bulldozers and other equipment all over the place with all kinds of stuff in the air. But the reason I was surprised is the number of homes that were there. And I was asking people, you know, when were these homes built? Before, after the Superfund site? What's going on here? Turns out some of the homes were built on an area that's now designated as a Superfund site. And they were offering for us as visitors to get little plastic booties to put on while we walk around. I've got people standing on their front porches, and I'm being asked if I want to put on booties to be able to walk around those people's front yards. Little kids playing out in front. You just wanted to scoop up all these people and get them the hell out of there. You know, and the more you read about this, you realize looking at these kind of documents, they all sound fine on paper. These are things that we need to do. But when you're looking at them, one of the things you notice, where are the outcomes? What do you want done? You know, and not just what we should be doing, but what is it that's got to be done? And where's the timeline? When are you doing that? And who's supposed to be responsible for doing those? The other thing that isn't here, and one thing I want to talk about, are the words we use. For instance, a lot of times when people talk about these issues, they talk about climate change, not climate crisis. Now think about that when you're talking with somebody who may not know much about it. Climate change just sounds like something inevitable that's going on. I'm going to have to deal with it. Climate crisis says, something's going on here that's not right, that I've got to deal with. So sometimes taking a look at our words is a really important idea. One of the words that came up, I had an EJAC, this National Environmental Justice Advisory Council. We had a steering committee meeting this afternoon for 2 hours. And one of the things I was thinking about is what one of the persons said. They used the word resilience. And they said, that makes it look like I'm supposed to be strong and deal with it, rather than somebody should have done something about this and they didn't do it. And that people in my community don't want those kind of words used. So it's just something to think about is when you're moving something forward, whose words are you using? And whether it gets people the understanding that something's really wrong, and whether a word allows you to understand what's responsible. Even the word environmental justice, should it be really environmental injustice? Would that be not a better characterization for talking something like this? It's got the same problem as the word criminal justice, right? So I just wanted to mention that when you're developing those reports or other things, I really would urge you to make sure that you got in outcomes, timeline, who's responsible, looking at the words we're using to do something to be able to move things forward. Okay, could you, and maybe one other thing about the Superfund sites. There's been a recent report that says that within 1 mile of the Superfund sites, that the housing that's there is a huge number of public housing projects. So within 1 mile, there's a huge number of these public money has gone into housing for usually people who have little income or a minority. And so many of them are in that area. And there are other research that says within these Superfund sites, within a 3 mile area, 22% of the US population lives. So you can look at this from 2 ways. And you might say, well, what was there first? Were the people living there and then they put the Superfund site in, or was the Superfund site there after, you know? And while that's an interesting question and you want that for blame, the outcome is, are we putting an environment in place that's safe for people? So one of the things to think about is this environmental landscape. Perhaps go to the next slide. I mentioned that I'm a mediator, and because I saw the other presentations are on housing, I thought I ought to put something in connected to that. I like to talk about dispute intervention. Notice the word, not resolution, but intervention, because many times you are not going to solve something, but you're making the attempt to be able to go in and do it. Sometimes people, particularly in business, might use dispute management. So again, which word do you choose? Intervention, resolution, management? And what does it say about your process and who's putting it in place? In terms of dealing with housing, and particularly what's been going on during this pandemic, so many people have not been able to afford where they've lived, and they either have to walk away from it or somebody's taking them to court because they owe money for something. So in the US, we have many people, these landlord-tenant situations or eviction situations that have a way to be handled in court. So somebody who owns the properties may go in and file something to get people out or to get the money back or some combination. But there are a number of ways to handle that. And sometimes you don't want things to be able to go to court. Even here, where we do have a possibility in court, you will find, for instance, law firms advertising that they will deal with the situation because they're telling you they're going to save money to be able to do it. But I think what I want to mention is that one of the things to look at housing, people have a right to housing. And adequate housing. That may mean buying housing, that may mean renting housing, that may mean being able to stay where you are for a certain period of time. And there are a number of ways to deal with it. One may be through the court, others may be negotiation, where individual or attorneys or representatives of an individual directly talk with each other to try to work something out. Another is mediation, which I'll talk about in a minute. And then there's med-arb, which is mediation and arbitration, which may mean if the mediator is unsuccessful at doing something, parties have agreed in advance that that mediator can make a decision like you would in court. And so it becomes an arbitration. If you move to the next slide, please. Because I'm a mediator, we're focusing on the mediation part. And I like to define mediation in this way. You're going to find different definitions, but a lot of times people talk about it as a, remember I mentioned negotiation, where two people may directly talk to each other. Some people define mediation as facilitated negotiation. So in other words, somebody is helping those people talk to each other. This is a more developed definition. Mediation is a creative, humanistic, rights-based, and flexibly structured process in which an impartial individual or more, could be a team, helps disputants identify their individual and mutual interests and perhaps reduce or resolve their differences. Let me talk a little bit about the parts of this definition. Notice the word creative, and that's there, and I usually put it in anything when I'm defining clinical sociology as well, because it's not a matter of this is a way to do it, and I use this in every situation. It means that situations are different, and even if I have a regular kind of structure that's something, it is looked at in relation to the particular situation I'm dealing with. If you don't put it in the definition, sometimes people think think I can just do cookie cutter. I can do what I've done in one place and do exactly the same in the other. You put that word in there and you discuss it, it slows that thinking down. Humanistic, that you're actually seeing the best of humans, that they care about each other, and that should be part of it. I used to just use the word humanistic because I thought rights-based was part of that, but I've increasingly starting to also write rights-based, particularly in mediation. Let's take a situation in which maybe you have a war and you've got people who are on different sides in that situation. And maybe there have been people who've been raped as part of what's going on here. And the two sides agree that they just aren't going to, they're going to forgive each other for anything they've done and move on. That does nothing for the people who've been raped. So rights-based means I have to look at everybody's rights that are involved. And with mediation, you would want, the UN in documents they've written usually has some wording that goes along this lines. But I like to see in any mediation that people have a right to knowledge. You know, you don't want one side to run over the other because they have money or they know more about a situation. And it's the mediator's responsibility to make sure we've got an even playing field and that we are respecting everyone's rights. Flexibly structured process. The mediation process usually brings people together, has discussion, talks about what issues we want to develop, and then moves forward with it. But it can be done in different ways. And if you're doing it about a topic like eviction, you might want to do it before a legal process has started. You might want to do it at an earlier stage. You might want to after maybe it's gone to court and things are not working well. So at any stage of the process, mediation could take place. In some countries, this is part of a legal process, and it may not be for the whole country, but in certain areas, it may be something that's offered. But you don't have to wait or connect it to a court process to do it. It could be something a community government puts in place or an NGO puts in place. The only thing I would suggest is that you make sure it's got a professional aura to whatever you're doing. It's one thing to just sit down with people and try to work something out, but somebody needs to know what the legal framework is in the community, needs to understand what the process involves. Documents need to be developed to be able to sign. And it's not just getting somebody's signature, it's making sure that people feel that they've been represented and can speak freely and have decided that this is something they want to be able to move something forward. Is there another slide connected to this, or is this the last one? I think we're at the end. So this gets you, I hope, started to thinking about some of this process. I'm really looking forward to hearing what other people say. Emma, I don't know how you're handling questions and whether you do that at the end or whatever,
It will
but
be
I
at the
hand this
end,
back to you.
Jan. We will have the Q&A at the end. Thank you very much,
Okay,
Jan.
thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Fritz, for your informative presentation on environmental justice and dispute intervention. So for the participants, if you have any questions on Dr. Fritz's presentation, do send them through the Zoom chat box or through the comment section if you're watching through the Facebook live stream. All right. So now we move to our next speaker who will talk about gender equality in housing, cooperatives, and community pantries. Ms. Jessica Umano-Soto is the country director of We Affect Philippines. Let us now welcome Ms. Soto. Ms. Soto, you may now share your screen. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
How is your connectivity, Jack? Um, can you show your slides now, Jack?
So far, I'm getting everything.
Would you want Patty to share it?
Yes, I'm doing it now, Doc. Are you hearing me?
Okay, okay. I can
Can
see
you
your
all
screen
hear
coming
me?
in.
I'm sorry.
Okay. It's a bit slow.
Yeah, sure, I will do that now. While doing that as well, if you can see my screen,
Patty, do you have it?
um, morning everyone, it's on the screen around me,
Your
so
connection is a little
you
bit
can
bad,
hear
Jack.
me clearly, but I'm trying to speak slowly and clearly.
Are you ready to go, Jack, or would you like Billy to go? Okay, thank you. Okay,
Can
Jack,
you
go
see
ahead.
my screen now?
Yes. Patty, what happened? Okay.
Miss Jessica had experienced technical issues. Perhaps we can go to Dr. Billy Tusalem's presentation for
Yeah.
now. Yes, all right. Dr. Billy, are you ready for your presentation?
Okay.
All right.
I'll take over.
Okay.
Okay.
So, let me introduce Dr. Billy Tusalem. He will speak about gender-sensitive climate and disaster-resilient housing designs and technologies with food security and urban agriculture, a management systems approach. Dr. Billy Tusalem is the board of director of the Julio and Florentina Ledesma Foundation. Let us welcome Dr. Billy Tusalem. I will share Dr. Billy's slides.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Dr. Emma, of course, my colleagues in the graduate school,
Hello
as well as in.
everyone.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, go ahead, Billy. Josh, can you please mute Jessica, please? Uh, Billy, go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Emma. I believe that this will be addressed later on. Uh, First of all, I would like to discuss with you the introductory portion of my discussion paper here. Of course, I would like to recognize the institutions that I am linked with, the JF Ledesma as an community development foundation organized in 1974 as a research institution with bias to agricultural development related fields. And in 1990s, the institution evolved into community development with an organized unit within its organizational structure known as the Circular Force, which has been functional or have been functional sometime in the early 1990s. We have just organized this unit into a separate juridical personality designed to implement and spearhead various related research actions dealing with circular economy. I don't know if you are aware about circular economy, circular engineering, circular finance, which is related to green finance. And of course, the Earth-based habitat builders working with the community builders and community architects with alliance and collaboration with Sumsuk based in Thailand under the network of Asian Coalition for Housing Rights. And these community builders and community architects who handles the green building technologies and its application have been spearheading all construction activities being initiated by GF Ledesma Foundation and its allied network organizations. So now this morning, I would like to discuss with you the green sensitive or the gender sensitive climate and disaster resilient housing designs and technologies with emphasis on food security and urban agriculture. And I would like to level this off with the management system approach because we would like to really come up with something which is working on a organized fashion. And next slide, please. In as much as I was talking earlier about Jeff Ledesma working with a lot of research actions in the past, particularly agriculture, um, I would like to discuss with you, maybe for graduate school students, when I was in the graduate school, this thing should be put in a proper context, particularly in the context of management. That agriculture has been discovered and invented as source of food supply and backbone of economic survival by humans over 10,000 years ago. In other words, there was no agriculture once upon a time. It accelerated the transformative practice of human survival from primitive hunter-gatherers to sophisticated urban dwellers and communities. United Nations projection reveals that by 2030, this urban-based human population may swell to almost 70% of the world's total population. So this particular slide, you can see here the role of agriculture and its negative impact into our natural environment. Now, next slide, please. 40% of the Mother Earth's total landmass devoted to outfield and traditional agricultural production. In other words, it's almost half of the world's total space is being consumed by these human activities. And we are cutting trees, destroying natural ecology just for the survival of agriculture. Now, such landmass coverage has resulted to an increase. I'm now using the third slide. To an increase of transmission rates of numerous infectious diseases, causing a community-wide epidemics and even a global pandemic as mortality threat to human population. Third slide, please. Medical studies disclose that these precursors of human maladies have emerged and re-emerged with devastating regularity at the tropical and subtropical farming communities. It's quite evident now in our surroundings and even the current pandemic that we are experiencing. This could also be related to agriculture. This could also be related to the desire of human survival or humanity's survival for food security in a different methodology. Nevertheless, the agricultural activities, which are anchored on modern and conventional farming, are carriers and vehicles in applying volumetric chemical products and increased human exposure to toxic levels of agrochemicals, pesticides, and fungicides. This in turn creates significant health risks that are currently being sorted out by both toxicologists and medical epidemiologists. Actually, Dr. Jose R. Medina is one of our advisor consultant related to agricultural farming, particularly community-based farming. And he's involved with so many research actions or action research. And he's one of the retired professors of University of the Philippines, Los Baños. Actually, his training is basically an entomologist, but he has background on toxicology. Currently, he's doing a lot of work with Southeast Asian Regional Center for Graduate Study and Research in Agriculture. Now, on the next slide, please. With due consideration to the above premises, it should be emphasized that outfield farming methodologies have direct correlation to climate change, deforestation, dead zone proceeding towards desertification, genetic engineering, irrigation problems, pollutants, soil erosion, and degradation and waste, and that appropriate interventions and actions should be pursued. Now, all of these are activities that we would like to address and manage. Thus, it is likewise projected that in the next half century from now, humanity will further expand its dominion over planet Earth by increasing its population to almost 10 billion. And these statistics are really real now. And this would call for additional arable land, such as the size of Brazil. I'm showing to you in my next slides the map of Brazil. And you can see there that this is the projected requirements in order to maintain the current lifestyle of the humans. And apparently, such landmass and additional volume of outfield farming area will neither be accessible nor available due to global land volume and horizontal space limitation. Without an alternative action and strategic options to address these requirements in securing food security, a global social chaos is inevitable. So, the alarming situation of the agricultural uh, current activities of the human society has to be managed. And in our efforts, particularly in our small efforts related advocacies, we are working on the framework of urban land nexus, trying to organize and create an alternative that would serve as a platform in our current activities. You can see here in this infographics that the production space where work and employment are concentrated, these are the basic elements that we are instituting in one of our communities that we are supporting. And this community is located in the Visayas as well as in Mindanao. One of the pilot communities that we are working with is the San Carlos local government unit, where we have been considered as the second livable city in the world in 2011 by the United Nations Environment Program that was undertaken in Seoul, South Korea. You can see here in the infographics that the production space is being allocated. The circulation space is also being observed, where connectivity is maintained, and the social space where residential neighborhoods or the human settlement is located. Now, novel approaches and workable methodologies for sourcing out sustainable food supply where the production space is providing are huge challenges to challenge and to foster humanity's survival in the century. This is done while ensuring housing rights under the integrated context of urban land nexus, such as the production space, as I have mentioned earlier, the circulation or connectivity space, and the social space without encroachment into the few remaining functional ecosystem. Next slide, please. Now you can see here in the urban land nexus platform that also considered as a solution designed to address food security and housing rights, worth to be pursued in supporting the advocacy for climate emergency and climate justice amid COVID-19 pandemic. And such platform of solution provides the anchoring in promoting the integration of urban agriculture and human settlement as agri-home. This is in contrary to the outfield farming or plantation-based type of agriculture, which is being encouraged by the current societal scenario. You can see here the design of our housing units that you know considered as disaster resilient and gender sensitive type of structures. And this is not just a talk show discussion. We are implementing this in the different pilot communities that we have identified in collaboration with our partners, particularly the group of Miss Jessica Soto, who is the country director of WeEffect. I'm sorry to say that we have technical problems that we have just earlier encountered. Actually, what Miss Jessica will be presenting to us are the programs of WeEffect coverage that we are piloting in the different parts of the country, particularly in the zone, Visayas, Mindanao. Nevertheless, the agri-home concept that we're trying to work out and trying to do pilot initiatives in different parts of the country, particularly in the Visayas as well as in the Mindanao region. We call it the agri-home. And this concept is envisioned as a mechanism that would bring the sources of food supply closer to assisted household member beneficiaries. It's like a food mile, shortening it into the doors of our target communities. Likewise, such mechanism is designated to create an operational platform where food production and shelter delivery interventions are delivered and unified into one as a functional entity constructed and established within the built environment. Inasmuch as the entire construction design integrates architectural gender sensitivity as well as the features of urban agriculture integrated into the system of human settlement. And this would ensure a safe environment for women and children against violence and abuse from both external and internal oppressive elements, coupled with food security. So this agri-home concept works within the human settlement, consistent with the parameters of the urban land nexus that we also advocate in terms of implementation and integration into the master plan of a particular community, like what we are doing right now in our pilot local government unit in San Carlos City, as well as in Cagayan de Oro City, which is in northern Mindanao region. Now, we call this as a gender-sensitive enhancement design. And this has been introduced and piloted in one of the We Effect Philippine Country Program, particularly located in Basay, Samar in 2016. Actually, this particular community has been devastated totally. Even their governmental structure, their governmental buildings were underwater in 2013 November during that Yolanda tropical typhoon. And you can see here on the design is basically to provide a simple technical perspective on how to allocate spaces for each member of the family. The gender sensitive structure enhancement model is an ongoing efforts and initiative, as what I mentioned earlier, by the We Effect Network, headed by one of our presenters here, Miss Jessica. And by organizing and designing the home through the GSED, we can create an environment where women are empowered and all family members are more safe than in an open one-room affair. You can see here in the various governmental housing structures where with a 20 square meter with no partitions, you can see here that they are, delivering this directly to the target communities and beneficiaries. But apparently, it creates a lot of problems, and it creates a lot of conflict within the family. And these are sociological concerns that has to be addressed. That's the reason why we developed this gender sensitive enhancement design, working on that framework, how to address this family related conflict. And by giving space for every member to find privacy, to meet in the family, and by facilitating organized space and features needed for every activity taking place in the home, there is a possibility of creating a loving, gender equal family. So this is really the vision of the design. And next slide, please. Um, I think we have done that already. And emphasizing on the social housing and food mechanism as a unified package involves the construction of a household-based food production center with adequate housing with social space of the urban land nexus dubbed as agri-homes. No? And talking about the crops that we would like to promote, these crops, I don't know, for the local communities or the local audience here, they are familiar with the food menu such as the pinakbet, the ensaladang talong. These are the food menu of the ordinary Filipinos, and of course, etc., etc. And the raw materials, which would continuously be vertically grown within the walls or fences of the housing structures or within its built environment. The collaborative interventions will carry out an engineering approach to food production and cost-effective adequate housing constructions. Hence, no agri-homes crops would ever fail due to severe weather events, such as the food, the droughts, typhoons, etc. Since the environment is basically controlled and basically managed by a family. Now, talking about the technology that we are promoting here, as far as green building construction technology, considered as a disaster resilient uh, technological building activities. We're saying here that the house units that we are promoting is integrating the GSED built utilizing the green construction technology known as interlocking compressed earth block. And each of the block on a per unit basis has compression strength ranging from 800 to 1,000 pounds per square inch, which is way much ahead or very far from the comparative standards of the Philippine Building Code, because our code is only, it requires only 500 pounds per square inch, or 3 point something megapascal as the standard to consider a particular material as load bearing. You can see here, I'm presenting to you here the ICBD technology production process. You can see that the sourcing out of the materials is just around the corner. In other words, our materials is within the community. It's available, in other words, within the various villages or various communities that we are covering, making that as pilot centers in spreading the good news of this technology. You can see in the process from the drying, screening, pulverizing, and then the measurement of dry material, the mixing, the wet mixing of the material, the weighing of the input. By the way, I would like to emphasize that talking about the cement ingredients into the mixing of the materials, we are just encouraging the mixing of the cement with a content of almost 5% to 10%. So you can see here that the 90% of the earth material composition that we are promoting in this particular technology is basically earth. And the production of this is basically done by the community people, and we call them as community builders. Now, as far as the compression strength, we are encouraging that the community should maintain the level of standard ranging from 800 to 1,000 pounds per square inch or PSI. And what we are saying here that this could eliminate the establishment or construction of structures. Next slide, please, so that the people can see how the technology is being done and considered as a resilient structure against disaster, against lateral movement. The Yolanda typhoon, the lateral strength of that typhoon, it was the biggest during that year, 2013. Its lateral strength is almost 300 kilometers per hour. And what we have here, it can withstand such kind of strength. That's why the interlocking compressed earth block is load bearing, requires smaller amount of steel reinforcements, guaranteeing cost effectiveness of the entire construction process. And the blocks undergo periodic quality control testing procedure with government accredited testing center to ensure that compression strength is maintained at standard levels. All of these technologies are products of collaborative efforts, particularly with our partner, the We Effect, where most probably it will also be mentioned in the presentation materials of Miss Jessica, the country director. And right now, this is the technology that we are promoting, and what we are saying here that it's community-based, labor-intensive, and thus generating productive employment within the covered communities and villages that we are supporting and assisting. Now, next slide, please. I would like to show to you the equipment that we are using. It's very simple. Actually, some countries in the world are already doing this, but we have improved this tremendously. The blocks that we are producing is using equipment called the interlocking compressed earth block. This is an enhanced machine where two individuals operate the ICEB machine. We call it ICEB machine manually during the production processes. Actually, there's just an improvement of the technological processes of this particular ICEB production. We have improved the machine, and right now we are working for a semi-automatic hydraulic machine that would accelerate the production output. That in just a day we can produce as much as 1,500 to 2,000 blocks. But right now, currently in the field, the capacity that the machine can handle is only 500 blocks per day. Now, production output ranges from 210, as I already mentioned, to 500 blocks, depending on the production capacity level of the operator. The operators undergo training of the ICB production processes from material preparation to the actual machine operation. You can see there, or earlier, or a while ago, the production process that we have been doing. Now, I would like to show to you the actual. This is not just a talk, as I've said. There's really an application of what we have been doing. Uh, in GF Ledesma, under our network in WeFact, we are combining the academe and the actual application of what we are doing and what we are discussing. The concept turned into or being transformed into actual action, and we are implementing this right now in one of the communities in Western Samar. They call themselves as Basay Ecoville Cooperative Housing. They are working within the structure of cooperative housing. I think there's a DA registration or the Cooperative Development Authority registration is being worked out, and this will be available before the end of the year. Now, in this slide, you can see the structures
Jack.
uh, that we have been doing, and this is very quick, Dr. Emma. The gender equality and empower all women and girls. This is one of the actions that has been documented by UNDP Philippines as part of their compendium. And the family size can cover 5 to 6 members per household. Next slide, please. Hello, next slide, please. And then again, as I've said, we are emphasizing the violence against women. Any act of gender-based violence that results in or is likely to result in physical, sexual, or mental harm or suffering to women, including threats of such acts, coercion, or arbitrary deprivation of liberty, whether occurring in public or in private life. So this is a United Nations definition against the violence against women. And this is integrated into the housing system that we are promoting. When building for women and children, we are building a city for all. So you can see now this is a picture in 2015. You can see there that there's a lot of improvement in the structure. The local government unit of Basay has provided the site development. This is already hello. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. You can see the communities there. Uh, the local government unit has provided the site development and the installation of the urban utilities, the drainage system, the water. This picture was taken in 2015 in Basay, Western Samar. And then the women and men use public space and homes in different ways and during different hours due to different life situation, local norms, roles, and the daily duties. As I have said, I would like to emphasize once again that the local government unit of Basay is working in collaboration with our network, and they have provided the urban utilities such as water, power, as well as the drainage system. So you can see here right now that the latest picture that we have, we were not able to present it here because I was in the hospital. I cannot really update this one, but this one, this is the picture that we have captured in 2015, and we have a better picture than this. And anyway, next slide, please. Um, there's a saying here that my home is my fort. In the house, there's a space for family gathering and privacy for every family member. Actually, these communities that we are assisting are the victims of the Yolanda tropical storm with 300 kilometers per hour lateral force. And all of these guys, most of their families were washed out by the flood. And I don't want to talk about sad stories here. The discussion as far as the architectural component is concerned, you can see the floor plan. We promote a 52 square meter, the governmental package available and being offered by private developers, profit-making developers. They are offering as much as only 20 to 22 square meter. In our case, we're offering higher than that or more than double than that. Um, there is a space for family gathering, privacy for every family member, and the open space for spending time with the family over food activities or doing household work together. There are also enclosed spaces to close off from pressure, family, friends, where to relax by oneself. In the home, there's space to grow, develop, and be oneself. So these are, architectural discussions that our architects and engineers would like to promote in presenting this particular design where gender sensitive home is being observed. And there is a sleeping organization, and you can see that. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. I would like to emphasize the sleeping organization within the structure. Next slide, please. Yeah, you can see there. And there's a flexible room for parents, and of course for the babies and children. And our main bias here is to protect the women as well as the children, because the intruders are just within the corners. And study shows that oftentimes the home is not safe for the women and the children. So our architects, our engineers designed this kind of arrangement within the space and limited structure of the building system. Now you can see the household chores, the family space, and you can also see here the interior design of the building. Can you yeah, please, next slide, please. I would like to maximize my time. And then the entrance receiving area. Okay, this is not just a drawing here. No, this is really an actual situation, and we have done this already. And then you can see the comfort room within the structure. Low, and the water connection within the structure. Okay, the bedroom, and of course we have provided the loft within the structure. Okay, the building footprint is almost 30 square meter, and multiply that. We can produce multiply that by 2 through the structure of the loft. We can produce as much as double than that. That's why the United Nations standards, which is 48 square meter, we have exceeded that standard, that UN standard, as far as floor area is designed. You can see here the various pictures, the actual pictures. These are drawings, no? These are schematic drawings or architectural drawings. Next slide, please. Hello. Next slide, please. Next. Okay. Now you can see the actual pictures, no? The photo images of the gender sensitive design. Okay. And how the waste management is also being observed. Okay. Now, the community-based multi-sectoral and multi-stakeholder social housing design with the agri-home delivery framework, it also integrates the housing finance. That's why I would like to emphasize some of the people from Social Housing Finance Corporation, as well as officers from Pag-ibig. I believe they are also here, and they have the access over this webinar. I would like to mention these people because they are so helpful in making this project tangible, real, and acceptable to the community. And in San Carlos, what we have used as far as housing finance is concerned, we access the facility of Pag-ibig HDMF. Pag-ibig HDMF is one of the key shelter agencies of the newly established Department of Human Settlement and Urban Development. And next slide, please. You can see in the schematic diagram here that there are 4 components that we are promoting. We call it the social preparation and community organizing. integrated housing finance, and then the integrated technical support, and multi-sectoral housing finance and technical capacity building. And the last one is the community organizing for individual accounts. Why community organizing for individual accounts? Because we're benefiting and assisting the marginalized and disadvantaged communities in our work coverage. We have to assist them individually. In fact, by next week, we have to work out a sort of a community organizing, focusing on individual accounts among Muslim women in Cagayan de Oro. We have a project known as Muslim Christian Women Housing Project that is working in collaboration with the Archdiocese of Cagayan de Oro, headed by the Archbishop Tony Ledesma. And he just retired from Vatican, and the newly Archbishop is also very supportive, Bishop Joe Cabantan, who is doing a lot of support to our technical people there. And all of this, particularly this flow, is working in collaboration with the Social Housing Finance Corporation as well as with the Pag-ibig HDMF. The one in the Visayas, particularly in San Carlos City, we are utilizing the Pag-ibig HDMF housing finance facility. And the one in Mindanao, or the three communities that we are piloting in Mindanao, we're working with the Social Housing Finance Corporation, headed by Attorney Cabling. This morning, we have a short talk, we have a short communication exchange, and he knows that we're talking about this housing finance that we have worked out with them. In fact, through our advocacy efforts, we were able to bring down the interest charges from 6% to 2%, which is really designed for the poorest communities that we are assisting. In fact, these communities were also like likewise victims of the previous tropical storm Sindong, where almost 6,000 human lives and properties were destroyed. So you can see that we have to come up with something. We have to start from the very, very beginning on the master planning, not only jumping straight into housing construction. We have to do planning, and the next step, collaboration with different stakeholders. Social housing is a very expensive endeavor. It's a very expensive effort, and we have to collaborate with different sectors of the community, particularly the local government, who supposedly, based on our constitution, they're supposedly the promoter and the champions in providing housing for the homeless. But of course, some local government people, particularly in other areas, they are not aware of this, and they are not really working on this as a part of their priority agenda. And given the fact that 70% of the world's population, or the community population, is going urban, statistics shows it's almost 70% by 2030. So this kind of advocacy should really be instilled to the leaders, the community leaders, particularly the local government units, to really be aware of this current situation. Now, we'd like to come up with my remaining slides here. Major takeaways. The four major takeaways: that the gender-sensitive, climate and disaster-resilient housing design should really be promoted, benefiting the marginalized and the disadvantaged communities, particularly the homeless, and those victims of the natural and man-made disasters. And then piloting gender-sensitive, disaster-resilient housing design should actively involve the partner local government units to adopt the concept of integrating food security into social housing delivery towards adequate housing, given the fact that we are facing the threats and the perils of the COVID-19 pandemic. And the third takeaway, that this concept should serve as a guide among collaborative partners and template for its replication and community-wide application, and integrating this gender-sensitive housing design into its building system. And of course, the learnings and unlearnings can also be an input to the legislative agenda. If we have champions in the lower house as well as in the upper house. Right now, we are talking with Dr. Francisco Benitez, Kiko Benitez, representative. It's a Negros-based congressman. based in the Visayas, and is working on the new law for agricultural, urban agriculture, and we are also working on with this congressman as far as the input sharing is concerned, in sharpening and enhancing the law that is crafting for its application. Will be maybe sometime this law will become available in 2022 for its final reading. I think that the law is already on its third and final reading. Anyway, to close my discussion, I'm providing you references there. Maybe Dr. Emma, you can share this to your students, and
I
how
already
the
sent
gender
it to them,
sensitive housing.
Billy.
Okay, very good.
Okay.
Well, as I would like to emphasize in my closing statement, a household-based JCDRHD is an ideal platform that would realize the policy advocacy in pursuing climate justice. This would likewise allow the conversion of an equivalent amount of farmland back into whatever ecosystem was there originally, as established by the Mother Nature. We're promoting household-based agriculture. We're promoting a family-based type of structures where the food mile will be significantly reduced into the doors of the communities that we are assisting. Thank you very much, Dr. Emma.
All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Billy, for your presentation on gender sensitive and disaster resilient housing project of JF Ledesma. So for the participants, if you have questions on Dr. Billy's presentation, you may send your questions through the Zoom chat box or through the comment section under the Facebook live stream. All right. So let me introduce now the next speaker for this morning's session, Dr. Emma Porio, who will speak about embedding systems thinking and transdisciplinarity in gender sensitive and climate resilient housing innovations. Dr. Porio is a professor of sociology at the Ateneo de Manila University and a science research fellow of the Manila Observatory. Let us now welcome Dr. Porio. Doc Emma, I think you are muted.
Okay.
All right,
All
thank you.
right. My presentation is about, it's really just summarizing all the principles that the speakers have done in terms of systems thinking and transdisciplinarity in our social development project. So, um, let me I have a presentation at 11. So as what I'm basically saying to my class is that first we have to locate the challenges and the threats to our social development projects within the nature society interactions. As Dr. Belli was saying, is that, you know, nature, agriculture, and human systems has been basically interacting. So he was talking about circularity of economy, society, and geography. And Professor John Fritz basically specify that we should look at our interventions at the micro level, at the family community level, at the meso level, which is at the institutional and organizational level, then at the macro level, which is national, regional, and global. Okay. This comes from sustainability science towards a thin synthesis. I put you there the reference. If you look at it, I was saying to you the last Monday or last Wednesday also that really to do our work, we need to be conscious of the capacities that we need to develop in ourselves, with our groups, with our institutions and organizations, and with local governments and national governments, what I call the capacities necessary for sustainable development. So, number one, we need systems thinking to measure our capacity to measure the progress of our social work. Also, the capacity to promote equity, as you can see in the presentations of Dr. Fritz and Dr. Billy Tusalem, the principles of capacity to promote equity, the capacity to govern cooperatively, the capacity to link knowledge with action, and the capacity to adapt to shocks, and the capacity to transform what we are doing so that we can effect a more sustainable, equitable development pathways. So as I will just remind you, as I was saying to you earlier, that systems thinking is really systematic, understanding and acting on the system. So I'm telling you about, as the speakers have also emphasized, understanding the systems means to be conscious of the multiple stakeholders, the influences, the interrelationship of their actions of multiple stakeholders. Through dialogue and collaboration, we should be able to co-design solutions, and we should be able to assess and adapt our systems of working, our systems of decision making, and the like. Okay, so I will just remind you, as I was saying to you earlier, because this is a program, I was explaining to you earlier that transdisciplinarity is really embedded in how we work, in how we apply our scientific models, as Dr. Billy and Dr. John Fritz has shown, in terms of transdisciplinary means that we put together interdisciplinarily and in action with professionals and practitioners and policymakers on the ground. Okay, and I've shown you this basically transdisciplinary action research in terms of linking science to action and through co-generation of knowledge and through co-creation capacities and co-ownership. And John Fritz has explained to you this, and Jessica Bersilia would have explained to you how gender equality really in the Philippines is doing community resilience innovation and really doing systems thinking and transdisciplinarity in terms of their replicable innovations through people's planned financing, doing resilient and sustainable approaches as shown by Dr. Billy Tusalem in terms of building housing communities to have safe, secure, and climate as a resilient and livelihood development through, as Jessica would have shown you, integration of food security, common gardens, kitchen gardens, food and housing, houses to housing projects, and integration of wash for resilience to housing, and then integrating gender and housing prices. And you've seen this. I think this is a very good GF Ledesma's model is really a good illustration of how you do integration of multi-stakeholder knowledge as well as technical and practical knowledge and the like. Okay, so I will not go and then so basically in the we effect and the GF Ledesma um, shall we say, housing, community housing innovations with housing associations and cooperatives, I would say that they were able to really affect what I call the 3 Gs of social development: gender, generation, and geography. You must be conscious of, the differential gender needs, the different generational needs of children and women, PWDs, and even those of other sexual orientations, and their geographies of power, the systems of power that is connected to their social system, political economic systems, and their cultural social geographies. And there is an dynamic interactions of the systems across sectors, time, and space, as Jan and later you'll see in Jessica's presentation and especially in Dr. Billy's presentation. So um, uh, you will see that, in the 1 million housing of that Jessica will talk about later, systems thinking is very much embedded as well as transformative approaches. So here I'm basically allocating the actions for resilience. Really, it has the components of the actions of resilience for the new urban agenda. So as Dr. Billy has shown and Dr. Fritz about local implementation, financing, also within the local and urban planning, and the rules and regulations associated with, planning and design and the like. Okay, so this is an example where say we articulate, and I've shown you this, that within the local governments, the Philippines will go full devolution and full decentralization. So this is really a good opportunity for linking science towards integrative convergent pathways to resilience with investments in the public goods that the local government is interested. So I've shown you this also, basically, that you must be conscious of your location. So the initiatives that Dr. Fritz and Dr. Billy Tusalem has shown, you can locate it at the level of the household, the level of the community, the level of the city local government. I will not go into that because I've been explaining to you all this time, the past 2 weeks, about this approach. So again, you have to locate it within the urban social ecological systems in order that you can prepare, adapt, and transform the systems resilient. So I always say that, you cannot work alone. You have to be working with a team coming from different disciplines. So physical and social scientists, planning and industrial sciences. This is my team at the Coastal Cities at Risk. You subscribe to our website, and you will get regular updates of what we're doing. And basically, I always emphasize to the scholars here that you must always acknowledge the source of your knowledge and who are the people who are with you. Okay, so thank you for your kind attention. And as I always say, I like this African proverb: if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far and farther, we must work together. Thank you very much. I will stop sharing screen now so that hopefully Jessica will be able to. Um, um, no, okay, Patty.
All
Is
right.
Jessica? Are um, Jessica slides in now?
Miss Jessica, are you ready to present po?
If you have the slides, just show it. Okay.
Uh, Miss Jessica cannot also send the slides
Yeah.
to.
Jessica, have you sent the slides? Because if you cannot, then we will open it to open forum, and we will
Send
send
it.
your slides to the SOCDIV Google group.
Yes, Doc. I've sent it several times in the chat box.
Okay, can you show it now? You share screen.
Or what we can do.
Can
Yes,
you
I
share
will do that
screen?
now.
We did not get it, so can you just share screen if you can?
I am sharing.
Okay. We're not.
I am sharing it, Doc. I am sharing it now. And
Okay. I think it's loading very slowly because I am still viewing Patty's screen, not yours. Jessica, maybe we will just go ahead to the question and answers. Hello. Patty, we cannot go on like this. Just
All right,
open to
so
the question
perhaps
and
we
answers.
can go to the open forum already. Okay, so this portion will be moderated by yours truly and Dr. Porio. We will be receiving questions through our Zoom chat box and the comment section on Facebook. We also highly encourage our Asian Peace Builder scholars to take part and send their questions for our guest speakers to Dr. John Marie Fritz, to Dr. Billy Tusalem, and to Dr. Emma Porio. Okay, so there is one question for Dr. Billy by Pang Suong, one of our Asian Peace Builder scholars. The question to Dr. Billy is in the Zoom chat box. I will also read it for everyone. So the question is, I agree gender sensitive home is a perfect design, flexible and relaxing for all the family members. After all, I consider everything depends on the budget availability of the house builder or the government or institutions who provide those housing. In this sense, I just wonder how the low income families could manage to own those kinds of gender sensitive houses. Or how do you ensure that the poor communities get gender sensitive designed houses while they cannot afford enough budget for such an excellent and comprehensive housing design? Again, this question is for Dr. Billy Tusalem.
Are there other questions for Billy? Because if there are other questions, read it all.
All right, so there are no questions.
There's a question
There's
on
a
how
question.
gender, gender-based violence. How do you prevent it in those housing? Doc Belly, can you please tackle it? Doc Belly, are you there?
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Emma. I was able to pick up and capture the questions. I believe there are two major questions here: the costing and then the behavioral matters as far as violence against women. The first question is about costing. This can be answered by slide number 41, and also the proverbs the African proverbs that Dr. Emma mentioned earlier about collaboration instead of one single unit action. So in other words, costing can be addressed by collaboration. Why collaboration? If I would like to go into the details of that, this would be a very long response. Experience shows in our work that social housing is very costly. The 480 or 580,000 or 700,000 peso per unit package in Luzon, because it varies. It's a conditional type of thing. Uh, in the Visayas, we can produce as much as 290,000 peso to 500,000 peso type of package. In Mindanao, we are talking about 580,000 pesos per package. In San Carlos, my city, uh, we are using the 450,000 peso per package. So in other words, it varies. Now, talking about how to make it sure that all this integrated design will be instituted into one place, into one package, that would really require huge amount of resources. That's why we have to involve other stakeholders to address this kind of requirements. A marginal, a disadvantaged individual within that particular community can never afford that. With Social Housing Finance Corporation, we use the interest charges as our strategy to lower the costs. In fact, in our recent discussion at the policy level, we were able to bring down the 6% to 2%, and we're able to come up with a lot of strategies. Right, like in San Carlos, we're using the vouchering strategy that the local government will really subsidize the project, and then the voucher type of arrangement is being used so that it will become affordable to the target communities, particularly the disadvantaged community or disadvantaged population. So I think that's the first one. Now, how can we ensure? Yeah, the ensuring there, engineering and architectural can be an answer, but we have to involve the participation of different actors within the community, particularly the local government authorities. We have problems that we have encountered in one of the communities that we have in Western Visayas, particularly in Eastern Samar or Eastern Visayas, no, in Western Samar Basay. It's a municipality where our piloted community is situated. And as I have mentioned earlier, they call themselves as Ecoville Cooperative Housing. And we have also, uh, you know, uh, faced some challenges there as far as behavioral concern on violence against women. But we were able to handle that by involving the collaborative efforts among various participants, particularly coming from governmental authorities under the Department of Social Worker and Development. So in other words, you can never do it alone if you want to come up with an intervention that would really address homelessness, that would really address gender sensitivity related concerns, that would really address violence against women and children. It should be a collaborative effort. Otherwise, nothing will happen. It will really perpetuate this kind of social problem that we have been facing since time immemorial. Thank you.
Thank you po. Dr. Billy, there is another question from one of our scholars, Miss Emmy Yoshinaga. Her question is, how exactly can this gender-friendly housing design avoid gender-based violence, for example?
Well, to be very, very specific, if you try to revisit my response earlier, you can see there that the engineering and architectural design is just a preventive type of measure in addressing gender-related concerns. So, in other words, there should have a collaborative effort in preventing such social problem that will occur, that will happen into a particular setting or into a particular community. So, in other
But
words, it
yeah.
cannot be handled by one entity. It has to be handled in a very collaborative manner. Thank you.
Patty,
All right, thank you po. There is one question now
Patty.
for Dr. Fritz
Yeah, okay.
from Monivan, one of our scholars also. Her question is, Dr. Jan, how does mediation connect to climate justice?
Yes, thank you for the question. It's a good one. I'm going to give three examples to give you on this. The first comes from a community meeting that I attended where residents were very angry about a fertilizer plant that was in their community. And in fact, the fertilizer plant loved the state of Florida so much that it moved their international headquarters. But in that particular community, people did not like what was going on, the pollution that was coming from it. They felt they couldn't get a Superfund site established there. And I attended a community meeting where 3 hours long, people speaking for 5 minutes each, and there were only two people speaking in favor of the company. And the point that I found really interesting is that there had been a mediation that had gone on before all of this. And the mediation was between the company heads and the county supervisors. And it did not involve community members in it. And what it did was put off doing anything. Um, and I was really shocked because I felt this was a misuse of mediation and it hadn't involved the community as well. So one of the things is you can put it for any kind of environmental, but you do need to have parameters about what mediation is and how inclusive it's going to be. Second example, I'd mentioned that there was a Superfund site that I attended and visited in Philadelphia, and I went to a community meeting there. And I remember one particular resident talking about how the Environmental Protection Agency had to the land for the house to her left and the house to her right. And both of them, they felt they needed to dig up most of the yard to get rid of the soil that was there because of the contamination. But when they did the testing in her yard, they found no problem at all. And again, while nobody was talking about mediation, I was thinking this is a particularly good one. You've got an angry resident with good reason, because they don't take samples from every piece of the land. They take them at random, and easily somebody could have missed something when you've got somebody in the middle. So sometimes there's a potential to do something that people don't think about. And the third would be a bad example. Often when a community or a country recognizes there's a problem, they get the company representatives and the community together and they come up with some kind of monetary solution so that people can move away and be out of the area. But who's representing the people who are not born yet or who want to have that land there and take care of it? And so sometimes you can have mediation in misused because it's not dealing with all the parties or the representatives of people who may not yet be born or who may not have moved to that area. Anyway, you can find mediation at all of these different areas. And the question is this professional mediation? Is it really including the people to deal with the issues that are there? And then who's authorizing it? In some cases, it can be an NGO from the area who just decides to put it in place. If you can get support from the larger communities, that can be really helpful because it gives more teeth to what you're doing. But again, that rights-based justice principle needs to be involved in any kind of mediation. I hope this answers what you asked. Thank you.
Um, Patty,
Thank
can
you
we
very
call
much,
on
Dr.
Jessica
Fritz.
now?
All right. So we Miss Jessica, we already have the slides of Miss Jessica. All right, Josh is sharing screen. Now we move to the presentation of Miss Jessica Omanosoto, who is the country director of We Affect Philippines. She will talk about gender equality and housing rights, cooperatives, and community pantries. Miss Jessica?
Thank you very much, Patty. And my big apologies to everyone. Um, okay, so my topic is about gender equality, and a bit of it was already touched by Doc Bill. Can we have my slides, in the presentation mode, or from the beginning, or maybe move to the next slide? Um, what I'm going to present is my outline is basically three parts. I would like to have us a leveling up on the basic concept of gender equality and the cooperative housing, and share with you a little bit, our perspective on gender and cooperative housing, and a little bit on the community pantries as part of resiliency, under pandemic from the Philippine experience. So, of course, gender equality is the state of equal ease of access to resources and opportunities regardless of gender. So it's men, women, LGBTQIA+, including economic participation and decision making, and the state of valuing different behaviors, aspirations, and needs equally without discrimination, regardless of gender. Gender inequality in housing persists, of course, in the early 21st century, and the main causes of this is linked to the inferior economic status of women, since women still earn less income than men. And because of that, they experience more difficulties finding housing. It is also the legacy of traditions and long-standing legal distinctions in which representations of femininity and masculinity impose differences between male and female occupants. I'm now on slide 5. Moving on to the cooperatives, be it housing or other business, are basically not-for-profit and democratic organizations run for and by their members. They have a rich history and have developed out of a desire to do things differently as a community in a way that genuinely serve their communities. For housing co-ops, it can be large properties and development where people live collectively, or individual homes in close proximity. In slide 6, the cooperative movement's values are saying that it's deep-rooted in self-help, self-responsibility, democracy, equality, equity, and solidarity. And when these values are applied to housing, it means resident members are in control. Members self-manage the homes in a democratic way, and members have security of tenure, and members pay fairer costs, or a community-led housing organization limited strictly to its resident members. It is made up of members living together with shared values, managing their own resources, and creating their own resilient movement. Now let's move on to the housing context. On slide 8, I'm just giving you that in today's city, only 2% of the cities are 2% of the cities is what, hold on. Only 2% of the total landmass is actually occupied by what we call cities. However, in the cities, 70% of the economy are performed. Over 60% of the global energy are consumed, and 70% of the green gas emissions are emitted, and the 70% of global waste are produced. And the UN predicts that by 2050, 70% of the global population will live in cities. And that's what causing a lot of inadequate housing. At the national level, the Philippines has a 6.8 million backlog of housing needs. And it is estimated that 2 million are living in inadequate housing. In the meantime, only 0.07% is the total share of housing in the national budget. So how are we going to address the problem of housing? And then the Philippines is also recorded as the 13th most populated country in the world. No? The Philippines sitting in the Pacific Ring of Fire means that we are vulnerable to all natural calamities. We're also the top 10 country most vulnerable to climate change, according to some studies. And in the past few years, the Philippines was also identified as the third country that contributes to plastic pollution. Being a vulnerable country, we suffer at least 5 major typhoons a year. And therefore, there really is a need to have a climate adaptive housing design, just like maybe what Doc Bill has shared with you, and using green technologies. WeEffect is, of course, a Swedish organization, and its two founding members actually are the biggest housing cooperatives in Sweden now. I'm now moving on to slide 14, which is basically a title on what is our guiding principles on our housing rights work. On slide 15, it's saying that our work is guided by the Habitat Agenda. You know, Habitat is a conference of all countries in the world, which meets once every 20 years. And they adopt agendas. No? So the first one was in 1976, followed by Habitat 2 in 1996, and the Habitat 3 in 2016, where you have the new urban agenda calling for sustainable cities. And it's also breaking down SDG 11 for sustainable cities and communities where no one is left behind. No. This is the predecessor of the Millennium Development Goals, which called for cities without slums from 2015 to 2000. So if you can analyze this, governments are actually government should be having a master plans of at least 20 years to be able to deliver adequate housing. My next slide is about the 7 elements of the right to adequate housing, which is our foundation when we frame our housing programs. Number 1 is legal security of tenure, which basically means there should be no forced eviction at all costs. No? Number 2 is availability of services, materials, facilities, and infrastructures. So you don't resettle people in the middle of nowhere. Number 3 is affordability. And I think it means that when you pay your housing, it doesn't compete with your other cost centers like food, education, medical needs. No? Some studies have said that at least no more than 20% of the household income should go to paying housing. No? But I don't know if that's still true today. And then number 4 element is habitability, which means they should be placed, you know, away from elements, you know, out from the danger zones, because that's where public land is available. We have so many cases that people are relocated, you know, in areas where it's getting flooded, you know, every monsoon. Accessibility is element 5, which really looks at our neglected sector, the people with disabilities, the elderly, the people with special needs, no? And then of course, location is element 6, which of course looks at their proximity to their livelihoods. And that's why people keep coming back to the cities, because they have their livelihoods there, especially for daily wage earners. And last element is the cultural adequacy. So I think this is very real for the Philippines, because it is a multi-ethnic country, and therefore there should be a balance of access by different ethnicity. So, so far, the Philippines is actually promoting the cooperative model because this is a unique but tested form of organization that can contribute in reducing poverty and fulfillment of the SDGs. And I heard one question on how do you define a gender housing? And that's very challenging because when you're talking about social housing or public housing with 28 to 30 square meter, you can only do so much. And of course, like what Doc Bill has shown you, you can have, a curtain partition. You can probably put a loft, to separate the boys from the girls in the families. Uh, but that should not be enough. And we should be more innovative. We should be more progressive in really looking at what is a gendered housing. And this is not only looking at spaces, this is looking about decision making, the relationship of women, to the housing, especially home-based workers, and so on and so forth. So far, WeEffect has been supporting 17,000 families, and to have their adequate housing. I have removed a lot of pictures in my earlier slides, but I can send you some the slides with the pictures. In Habitat Day in 2019, we actually took the risk of launching our 1 million housing by 2030. So this is our 15% contribution to the 6.8 million housing backlog in the Philippines. So this is both a goal and a campaign, and we were able to have government and private sector signing with WeEffect and the communities to work together. Because first and foremost, housing is a human right, and therefore the government is duty bound to actually provide public housing for its people. But unfortunately, the pandemic got into the way. So we have ongoing housing constructions of about 4,000 housing units that's actually delayed now, and all over 20 housing project proposals are pending financing. This is a hybrid approach to a community-led housing projects because we really bring in private sectors and the public to work together. Since 1992, when the law was passed in the Philippines, each sector is doing their own thing. And communities try to build housing brick by brick, and it's not making any dent, Since 1992, we are now, having more housing backlogs than before. The last part would be the community pantries after pandemic. I think this is just an inspiration that I wanted to share, And this is so real that this is the biggest risk for the vulnerable people today, lacking in social and economic protection for at least 35 to 40% of the Filipinos. And housing is so critical and important for people to keep, their families safe. And that remains to be a challenge. Ana Patricia Noon had actually started this with a bamboo cart outside her house, and she was even red tagged for doing that. But now we have 6,700 other community pantries operating across the Philippines. So this is a living example of community-led management of social risk and community resources. And even I think economic risk because community pantries both all produce of the small farmers that they could not sell. And so there was some kind of solidarity trading that happened, under pandemic. So I guess I will end my presentation by the words of Lailani Farha, who is the Special Rapporteur on Adequate Housing. And she said that the right to housing means more than just a roof over one's head. It should be seen as the right to live somewhere in security, peace, and dignity. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you very much, Miss Jessica. We can, if there's one question for Miss Jessica from the scholars or from any of the participants, are there? Please share your questions through the Zoom chat box.
So, as of now, okay pa rin yung ating information. Darating pa rin sila.
Well, to the APS scholars, Asian Peace Builder scholars, are there any questions for Miss Jessica on her presentation? You may send your question on the Zoom chat box.
In 5 minutes, Patty, I'll say my closing remarks because I will have to move to my other meeting with the mayor of Manila.
Okay po. Okay, so there doesn't seem to be any questions for Miss Jessica. Perhaps we can move on, Doc Emma, to the closing remarks.
Okay.
Okay, so to
Thank you very
officially close.
much.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you very much, Dr. John Fritz, Dr. Billy Tusalem, and Jessica Soto. I mean, with all your great presentations, I hope our Asian Peace Builder scholars will be able to see some nuggets of wisdom in each of them and be able to apply them meaningfully to their respective communities. I always say communities of practice. So to your organization, to your community, to your institution, to your own national setting and the like. So as I said to you in my syllabus, just look at this as, we are offering you a garden of intellectual and practical delights that you can pick up that is meaningful for you. So I'm very grateful that, these distinguished speakers shared with us their lifelong experiences and um, I'd say actual, doable, actionable programs that they have been practicing this past weeks and really this past decades, I would say. So we're very grateful for your intellectual generosity, and I hope this will be the last time that you will hear from us, Dr. John Fritz, Dr. Billy Tusalim, and Jessica. We will have this program again next year with the Asian Peace Builders, and I hope you will be a returning speaker. And that's really very important. So thank you very much. Um, I really am grateful that you are able to show with your cases of practice and innovation, you're able to show that, system thinking and transdisciplinarity is an everyday life. It's just basically practicing what is systems oriented, what is really common sense, I'd say, and really um, respond, I would say proactively respond to what is there on the ground and really tinker and revise, reinvent your practices, also to in a sense to revise your concepts and their applicability. Okay, so thank you very much, everyone. um I thank you, Jan, thank you, Billy, thank you, Patty, thank you,